It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, as you know, the GOP-led House has sent over a funding bill to the United States Senate for approval that basically allows the government to continue to function. Democrats are at this point opposed to that, which makes it sound like a government shutdown will be inevitable. The irony, of course, is that if there is a government shutdown, it looks like this will just empower the Trump administration and DOJ to actually make more cuts than they would have if it was continuing to function. What do Democrats do?
I'd say, Dave, that the Democrats are in a very difficult position in the sense is that what's going to happen is that the Democrats are going to say, we want a 30-day extension so we can negotiate a new deal, new budget, new continuing resolution. They'll go to a cloture vote on this one. The Democrats will vote against it. Them a vote on their alternative. It'll go down, and then you'll get enough Democrats to pass it. So we're going to have these parliamentary maneuvers, but in the end, it will pass. This budget shutdowns are complicated because nobody wants to get blamed for a government shutdown, and in this case, you have the added dimension that you have just mentioned, which is that Trump and Musk and that crowd really want to shut down the government anyway, so they probably try to take advantage of it. We got in our fight with Gingrich when Bill Clinton did. What he did is he said, okay, dude, we're going to agree that we want to balance the budget. So now the question is how we're going to do it. As long as it was between balancing the budget or not, Gingrich was winning. But once we flipped it and made it about priorities, about Medicare, Social Security, we had him on his heels, and he paid a big price for doing it. The thing that has been most interesting to me about what we've had so far in this debate is I don't even know what's in the bill. I haven't read one word. I looked this last night and this morning for stories on the bill. I couldn't find one thing. All I could find were stories about whether the Republicans were going to keep all their votes or how many Democratic votes we're going to get. And so if the fight is over procedure, whether we do a 6-month or a 1-month extension, Democrats are going to lose that fight. And so they got to get out of it. If they had an issue, if there were Medicare cuts, or something like that they could drive as a substantive issue and have a legitimate reason that ordinary people could say, we really don't want to do that. Let's have some negotiations to figure out a way. They have a chance of winning, but you can't win on procedure. So I suspect what I said at the beginning is what will happen. Voter will fail. There'll be an amendment, a Democratic amendment, probably. That will fail, and then they'll probably get cloture and pass the House bill.
Craig, this is quite a conundrum for Democrats. What's your political instinct tell you?
Honestly, it's a conundrum for both sides, and I think that I take Al's point, and I suspect that the back and forth is going to go on until, late Friday sometime. No one really wants a shutdown as far as I can see. On the other hand, the White House is literally gloating. I mean, comments coming out from White House staff suggest that, just how clever they are and how they've tied up the Democrats. And I don't necessarily think that's the posture you want to take. There are Democratic votes needed to pass this bill in the Senate. And if you keep poking the Senate Democratic leadership, you may just not get them. And here's the funny thing. We pay attention to a lot of this more than 98% of the country, maybe 99% of the country. Republicans hold the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. If this government shuts down and we have chaos for a few days, several days, a week, whatever, it's the party in power that's going to not fare well in this. They think they can put the blame on the Democrats, but honestly, that's not a given. And so I would caution my Republican friends, this isn't over, and don't be too sure that you can put the blame someplace else. I do think, and I agree with Al, it's just curious. You just don't find descriptions of what the actual policy issues are. It's a back and forth over, well, they didn't let the Democrats have their say in the House, so we're going to vote against the bill in the Senate. Okay, well, that's interesting, but and Republicans say we put everything in there that the Democrats wanted practically to get this bill out, and then none of them would vote for it. So the back and forth on the partisanship is just further alienating people throughout the country from Washington and this crazy process we have. At the end of the day, there has to be a bipartisan solution in one way or another. You could find that Democrats will do something that will force all these House members to come back to Washington, which they, of course, don't want to do. They're out for a couple weeks, I think, and we would have chaos. We've recovered from these shutdowns, especially if they're short, fairly successfully, but real things do happen. The other thing I've heard is Republicans in the White House talking about how, well, if it shuts down, OMB gets to decide where the money goes and what opens up, and this is going to be wonderful. Well, I'm not sure the country, based on the polling, is really excited about further layoffs, further cutbacks, further shutdowns, and I don't know that plays into broadening or building more support for the administration. So it's I think in the end we probably avoid the shutdown, or we have a minimal few day shutdown. But once again, Washington is not faring well in the eyes of the public by going through this highly partisan process.
Al, the other thing that's been taking place over the last 2 weeks is a significant declaration of trade war on the part of the Trump administration against Canada, Mexico, Europe, China. When does this all catch up with American voters? When do you feel that there will be enough evidence that this is an unsuccessful strategy, if it is, that would change public opinion?
I assume that we'll see in the House races in 2026. Maybe we'll see in some of these specials, but most of them are so special elections to replace members of Congress who like Matt Gaetz and others. But those districts are generally so partisan, one-sided that the races may be tighter, but you won't see much. But look, we'll see it when people start feeling it. That is the real economic question. I mean, you have this lunatic, really, who has believed in tariffs. He's the only person in America who came out who probably thought Smoot-Hawley was worked to the advantage of the country because it put us in a depression. But he one day he's putting a tariff off, the next day he's taking it off, then he's putting it on. It's a little play toy for him, but tariffs are going to have a bad effect on the economy. Prices are going to rise. The economy looks like it's going to decline this quarter. Business community wants one thing: stability. How can you have stability when somebody is changing his policy every 5 hours? So there are going to be consequences. I'm not an expert. I don't know exactly how it's going to work, but you can't add 25 or 50% to the costs of materials and not expect people to try to recover them. And who pays the recovery? The consumer pays the recovery. Craig pointed out last week that consumer confidence has taken a dive. That's all since Trump's been inaugurated. The market went up between the election and the inauguration, and but he gets into this trade war, and the market's going straight down. that is even going to affect people like us because we're seeing our 401ks, shrink. All of that will have a cumulative effect. The other thing that needs to happen, though, for him to really pay a political price is the Democrats have to have a credible alternative. And I thought last week we had the first signs that some Democrats were actually thinking about putting together, dealing with some of our weaknesses and putting together an alternative. I was particularly struck by Alyssa Slotkin's response to the State of the Union. It was measured, it was taught in common language that ordinary people can understand, and she didn't, have a rant against Trump or Elon Musk. She said, we all want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, but we can do it in a responsible, not reckless way. And I think, that's a path for Democrats. I've talked about it before, but we ought to have our own alternative, whether it's based on Clinton's reinventing government or some sort of a sunset review process, where we, in a rational, responsible way, offer an alternative for dealing with a problem that most people feel that government is too big and has too much waste and is ineffective. It takes a long time to get things done, but it has to be a reasonable alternative. I also just want the other thing that happened last week was Gavin Newsom started his podcast and came out against transgender women playing in women's sports as a matter of fairness. That was a killing issue for us in this election. And one of the things that if Democrats are going to come back is they have to deal with their liabilities. He also came out against defund the police. I mean, you got to deal with the deficiencies. It doesn't mean you have to give up your principles, but you can't take positions and make them central to your message that are an anathema to voters or that you need to win. And so I'm starting to see maybe some developments in our party that will lead to shaping a real alternative. And if Trump continues to fail, and he is, we're going to see it in the economy, and if we develop a real alternative, I think he will pay a big price at the polls, both in 2026 in the congressional elections, but in 2028 as well.
Craig, you have the last word on this front. I mean, do you have a sense of when things might fall apart?
When it comes to tariffs and those initiatives, it's just hard to understand. The polling this week has suggested that voters across the country, over 60% of them, view the Trump handling of the economy unfavorably. Tariffs has been at the center of his initiative. Here we are, we're attacking our neighbors, Mexico and Canada. We're attacking our allies, the Europeans. The president thinks he's making peace in Ukraine, but the word out of Russia, I guess last night or something, was basically "niet." We are not going to accept the ceasefire. What? It's like, didn't you get the memo? This is supposed to be the Nobel Prize winning initiative. That's not working. It's hard to find any set of initiatives that are working. I mean, 130,000 Americans who worked for the federal government apparently have lost their jobs. If that's their measure of success, okay, so be it. It creates tremendous hardship, tremendous disruption. Some people think it's necessary. I completely agree, by the way, with Senator Slotkin. There are ways to do this, and probably some of it needed to be done, but it's not the way in which it's being done. So you just have this chaos. And to go back to our other subject, you may have a government shutdown. Republicans maybe just don't have a lot of practice of holding the White House, the Senate, and the House. But my friends in their party are not doing a particularly good job. And I think you also have to ask yourself, going back to tariffs, is there anything that's being done there that's actually going to make people feel good? No. Cars may cost $12,000 more. I saw today, in a fit of pique, President Trump says he's going to impose a 200% tariff on alcohol coming out of Europe. As one who enjoys Italian and French wine, this was not the best news of the morning. I mean, what does he have in mind? He's simply going to drive our prices higher. He's going to take the people that are making, farm products, produce and things that get shipped abroad, less likely to be able to sell their products abroad. So I think we're in for a very tough spring followed by a very hot summer is my view. And I don't think this is, going to fare well. But as the president likes to say, time will tell. We'll see.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thanks so much indeed. We will see you next week.